Thank you so much for joining me, Josh. This is
Sure.
really, for me, an opportunity to connect on a bit of a deeper level with some of our members, some who I know their stories or part of their stories, and obviously, love to just connect the dots. And we've been spending some time together, so I'm really excited to share some of the stuff that you shared with me already. And okay, but kind of how we met. Your sister-in-law vouched for you to come
Yeah.
into the community. And she's a
Yes.
clothing designer here in LA. And I just wanted to know if she dresses you or does she have any kind of styling advice? Because you have such a style yourself.
She and my brother are both clothes horses,
Mhm.
and so I try to have my own. I try to keep up. They are much more, yeah, they're much more exciting than I am, or
I think
cooler
you do
than
a
I
pretty good
am.
job.
Yeah,
So,
I've got my own. I'm a little brighter. I think that they're
yeah,
kind of the dark violet, but yes, that's right. I
there's
try
an
to.
accessorizing that happens.
I try. I try. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's branding. It's part of my brand.
I a
So.
thousand percent agree. I'm in a very like non-branded, New York mood today. But I dig it so much. But where did you grow up?
Grew up in Central Florida, but I culturally assigned as a New Yorker because my parents are all from my parents and my entire family are from Long Island. So
Okay.
I definitely am not a Floridian really by trade or
Were you
by
visiting the state, I mean, New York all the time as a kid?
yeah, it was definitely, definitely part of our history growing up and kind of the more attitude than anything. So it
Okay.
was kind of early young snowbirds, I suppose. And then
In
I
the
left.
reverse.
Yeah, exactly. I got out of Florida as soon as I could because it just was not the right fit for me.
What year did you leave? How old?
I left as soon as I could. I got to college. So I left in 94
Okay.
and went to school at Tufts University in Boston.
Nice.
And there kind of fucked around a little bit. Thought I was going to do some biology or some music or something, but ended up in a weird program that was sort of half engineering and half psychology.
Hmm.
Um, that was is known as human factors.
Okay.
And it was really an interesting kind of thing. And it was how I found design and visual design. So I was attracted to it in this sort of like kind of analytical, like how to design things for people to use better, of sort of early internet user experience stuff. But
Right.
it was when I sort of got into and discovered the idea of design and graphic design that I was like, oh, this is kind of interesting. And so when I left school, I
And that
actually,
all came through your college experience. You didn't go in with
yeah,
that intention? Okay.
no, 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 not at all. I mean, I was always visually, definitely astute and always I was grew up in, going to drawing classes all the time. My mom had me in drawing classes from, the get-go. So it was definitely a visual element to it. But nobody really knew about graphic design or visual design, especially not in Florida. It wasn't really something that kind of showed
You
up.
were aspiring to. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it just wasn't. I don't know. I don't know what it's like right now. Like my son's applying to colleges, and it's like, "What's your major?" And it's like, I didn't know. Like,
Yeah.
how the fuck do you know?
Yeah. Same. I have a son applying this year too, and it's the same.
Yeah,
Such a different time right now in the world of education, regardless, where
yeah,
that discovery period, it's gotten
compressed.
so compressed, so competitive, and so expensive. And then you look to see what does it net out in the world that we're moving into.
Yeah, you don't know like what are you gonna study? It's not gonna exist. It doesn't. Whatever you're gonna do doesn't exist today. So
So it's personal skills. It is, it used to be about critical thinking, and now we're using
I mean,
AI to do a lot of our critical thinking. But
yeah, I mean, I think asking good questions. I think philosophy is actually going to be really
I think
interesting.
you're
I think
right.
that's going to be a we're kind of elevating into that. Like, we got to be able to learn how to ask really good questions.
Right. I think the intellectualizing as a luxury, right? Where we get the cheat sheet, we get like the sound bites, we skim everything,
Mm,
zero depth. And retention obviously is a big challenge, I think, for all of us, especially with our screen use. And there's so many studies that have spoken to the actual impact on our brains and our attention. But it seems like it's something you can actually build back once you lose it, which is super interesting. Are you a big reader?
yeah, I definitely am. I read. Usually I read lots of fiction and sci-fi and
Hmm.
then at night, but then I'm listening to I late in life loving economics stuff. So
Ooh,
anything that's
interesting.
econ
And does it put you to
podcasts.
sleep?
No, no, that's during the day. When I have my coffee, then I can go listen to my econ podcast and then I come back. So it's politics and econ and I don't know. I don't know. It's something interesting about economics is kind of business related. It
Mm,
feels it's about human beings and the
yeah.
choices that we make and it's also about systems and I don't know. Like I definitely was not like this 10 years ago. So I don't maybe I'm just in my dad,
Dad
it sort
days.
of just
Well, it's also the
happens.
reality of our, of the expense of life. And so you start to look at economics differently. And I
Mm,
think, it's just like what's happening in politics for people that were not at all involved in politics are now having no other choice
that's
but
right.
to pay attention
Yeah.
and to
Yeah.
participate, hopefully. And I think it's the same thing economically when you realize, it's a supply and demand world and all sides of it that what you can impact. Everything from like how do you generate your own wealth, how are you looking at long term, your own runway, retirement, putting kids through college, all of a sudden economics takes on a whole other meaning than when you were kind of, I think, in our younger years, just like, paying the rent, paying the mortgage in a way that wasn't thinking, at least for me, um, where things are getting expensive. And as you get older, obviously incomes change. And so
Yeah.
much of what we're, been joining forces on at the board is how these career journeys are shifting. And that's a huge implication on economics, right?
Yeah.
Personally, um, whether people are building new businesses, raising money for the first time, thinking about how, they can make it last, number one. And I think that's the sweet spot at all stages is what used to work is not working. What you used to think was going to happen is probably not the roadmap. And I feel like that's where we're all
Yeah.
feeling a bit untethered. But back to your journey.
Yeah.
So graphic design, and then kind of just highlight us through.
Yeah, so I actually came out to San Francisco to study graphic design. So I sort of discovered in this program, this engineering psychology program, I was like, oh, this is interesting. I was like, computers and design and visual stuff. So I came out and studied at the Academy of Art University in San Francisco and I got a second bachelor's degree in visual design, right? Graphic design. And I was like, oh, and I was pretty bad at first, but
Mhm.
like unlike my first time through college where it was sort of like I don't know, B's and C's and I wasn't really motivated. Like this time I was like, I don't know, whether it's maturity or the subject matter, I was like fucking dialed in. Like I was up every night till 3 a.m. like working on these projects. And
Hmm.
I just like was so freaking committed and came out with an incredible portfolio. I was so proud of it.
You just really found your groove.
I did
Yeah.
totally. So I was in San Francisco and this was in 2000, 2001. And so lots of tech stuff happening. And I did a bunch of work. While I was in school, I worked for the Landor the agency doing a bunch of design stuff and worked on a Patagonia account and had the opportunity to work on like Avis and like really interesting things.
Hmm.
Did some work for a packaging company. They were doing HP stuff and then got kind of scooped up by my mentor and ended up being my mentor. His name is Marty Newmeyer, and he wrote a couple really powerful brand books called The Brand Gap and Zag and a bunch of others. Incredible writer, incredible designer. He was one of the designers that worked on Netscape and like was
Well,
all over software packaging. And he started a brand strategy firm, hired me as a designer, and that's kind of really where my career really kind of got going. So I was so blessed because I got to study under him. He's such an incredible designer, but also an incredible writer. And I was not a good writer. And so through my 6 or 7 years with him, like I just tried and tried and tried again and learned how to write while I was there and just gained so many things. And it was a very small studio. So it was
it's
like,
a gift.
for better or worse, he was like right there over me. And he's like,
Yeah, yeah,
move
yeah, yeah.
that thing, do that thing over there. So that's just
It's like a
so
masterclass. Yeah.
every day a master
Amazing.
class, and we had some incredible projects. And the work started, the premise of the company as I started was really about brand strategy, like what all the work that's kind of going into the visual design. We weren't doing the visual design.
Okay.
Um, and we ended up doing a few working with some clients where we had the opportunity to work internally and help do this kind of brand work for employees.
Okay.
So how to communicate to them.
So the internal brand book and Bible.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. And that really sparked something for me. And I left, I was kind of done there 6 years or so. And then it was like I was like interviewing and had some tentative job offers. And it was 2006 or seven. And then, like, literally the day I stepped out of the door, it was like the entire, the housing economy
Yeah. Oh yeah.
collapsed,
I remember
right?
Lehman's.
And so it was like I had three job offers and everybody went, "Yeah, we're not hiring right now." And I
Mm.
was like, "Oh, fuck. Like, what do I do now?" So I had this 6 month period of like, who do I know? What do I sell them? How do I figure this out? And it's interesting because a lot of businesses are started during downturns
Yeah.
because there's no other option. I was super young. I had no business starting my own business. I just didn't have enough experience, but I didn't have any other options.
Right. Right. Amazing though.
Yeah, and it was the way that I look back at it, and we
So
do
wait,
put
so
a
wait, how old are you? You said you're late 20s?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, definitely. 2007. So yeah, that's about then. And I needed a lot more a lot more, working under other people. But I had already left and there's no way I was going to go back begging for my old job. And it was like, what do I do? So because, it's like I don't know if when you look for work, right? You're like, "Oh, what's this? Oh, I could do that. What's the?" You kind of like sort of squint and look at your skills and you're like, okay,
Yeah, maybe
designer,
could
creative director or something, and I have
fit
something
in
else I can
there.
offer. But no, there was no job postings.
Right. Okay.
So it went from like job search to kind of soul search.
Yeah.
It was
Oh, I
like,
love that
okay,
though.
if I don't do this,
Hmm.
what do I do?
Right.
And that was when I had that 6 month period to kind of pull it all together and be like, oh, it's this, like, I want to use all of my skills, my design stuff, my writing stuff, my facilitations, all those skills to help companies deliver on those brand promises. And that was eventually I figured out that it was called culture. And
Mm-hmm.
that was like, so
Bucket it
I
under. Yeah.
bucket up, yeah, put it under culture. And that was really kind of the start of what came to be Great Mondays, which is this, my brand. Like, this is the small little agency where I was doing mostly brand strategy, but like I had this aspiration
Right.
to do more.
Creative. Yeah.
And when I started, I was so convinced. I don't know if you've had this moment where you're
Mhm.
like, I had this epiphany. I
Yeah.
know exactly what I'm going to do, and I know what it's called now. And I
Yeah.
went out to tell everybody. I was like, "Hey, everybody, I'm going to work on culture." And they went, "Like ballet? Like what do you mean culture?" And I was like, "Oh, fuck," right? Like I still
Yeah.
had to like make money and sell this thing. Nobody
Right.
knew what I was talking about.
Oh my God, I see
So
so many parallels to when I started the board. It's kind of crazy.
what is that? I don't get it. What is it, right? But I was so, like, as a Taurus, I'm very tenacious,
Okay.
and I was convinced that culture was going to be a thing. And luckily, a few years on, 5 years on, I had like half of my revenue was from work that,
Well, and where we are
pretty
today, I mean,
much.
it's all about that. It's all about chasing culture. Brands are all chasing culture, driving culture,
Yep.
reacting to culture, right?
Yep.
We've seen this flip of, being dictated to culture driving. And I think that's probably, for me at least, most noticeable in the last 5 to 10 years for
Yep.
me,
Yep.
coming out of the worlds I was in and really understanding where the power is, in the audience. And maybe it's social media and maybe it's, the advent of UGC and so much more data coming out and
Hmm.
self-declared data and all the things that people are trying to tap into. Um, but you were way before that, so
Yeah, not that it was, there's the deep learning that I went through. The painful learning is summed up by understanding that there is a difference between a clear view and a short distance.
okay, that's a good. I had to absorb that for a sec.
Okay, because I'm like, there it is. I just know it.
Hmm.
And I wasn't wrong. It
Right,
just
but it's
took
like how to get
10,
there.
took 10 years to get
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
Took 10 years to
But
get
you think
there.
about these things that build authentically over time. My opinion is that they have a greater staying power than the, quick ones that kind of spin up and spin away,
Hmm.
because it's still following an instinct that is really what we have. And what, I'd love to just kind of dive from there even into the work that we just did in New York, because it's so much of that
Yeah.
understanding, of yourself and kind of what you bring to the table as we're placing ourselves in different roles. Like you said, squinting, do I fit here? Is this where I take my X amount of years next? This evolution
Yeah.
that we're all on. And, obviously at the board, we're basically a community of people moving through life differently now, coming out of big careers, big companies, deciding to move into more of an entrepreneurial, solopreneur space. We call it fractional. People have small agencies, people are building brands, but it's still the sense of like, I'm taking agency, for myself and my career. I'm taking everything I've ever done and every, one I know, and I'm trying to figure out where I'm moving it. And
Yeah.
so talk a little bit about, what you did with us in New York as an
Yeah.
exercise, because I think it's was so brilliant.
Yeah. So I called the session Who the Fuck Knows? And it was just a declaration that in a world where everything is changing so quickly, we can't pretend that we can predict what's going to happen.
Right.
So if we think about like, if we don't know where we're going to be, what we're going to be selling, for whom we're going to be working, or any of that, what do we anchor in? And it's the thing that you will always have, which is you.
Yeah.
And so what I put together was a workshop that had a couple exercises that allowed for the people in the room to identify what their capabilities were. So going beyond the tools that you use, oh, I'm an expert in, whatever, Photoshop
Right.
or
SEO.
SEO, exactly, whatever it might be. And beyond the titles, because we've for such a long time, title has been so important. Director of, VP of,
Yeah.
right? But
Well, it's all of
titles,
our identity is wrapped in that.
that's exactly right. So I challenged everyone to extract to separate from that.
Mhm.
And what we ended up doing, we did a little brainstorm about your own capabilities. I had people write down kind of the 10 things that people were coming to you for, and we sort of evaluated those and then kind of used those as ingredients into uh, writing your own career obituary.
Mm.
And why that's so powerful. Now, I've used the obituary exercise for decades, and usually it's with a particular company. I have a room of executives, and it's like, your company dead. And everybody goes, "What? Don't, blah, 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 blah." But it's really powerful because then you
Yeah.
get to see it from 20 years, 20 years from now.
Yeah. And the legacy of it, right? What it was meant. Yeah.
What are people going to remember you for? What are they coming to you for? And then the model was, how did I, who did I work with, and what perspective changed because of my work with them? What
Mm.
are people coming to you for? Friends, family,
Right. Beyond an
peers,
employer. Yeah.
employee, yeah, like, what are you doing regardless of the thing you're selling? And that was such a powerful reframe for
That was huge.
everybody.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was huge. I mean, I had people come up to me saying, just like, like I just had a massive epiphany, and I think the hardest thing is to take decades of a career and
sure.
distill it down into like what we call a painkiller statement, right? And that is the
That's right,
problem you
exactly.
solve versus all the stuff you have done and can do. And it's really hard for us who are ego driven, right, to not talk about, give ourselves the accolades of all of that, those decades of impact, but it's where you're going with it. And I think you're right. Those traits and that the way that you had everyone distill it down is what you will carry through, no
Yeah.
matter, if tomorrow comes and your industry is closed.
Well, yeah, you have to move countries, you have to move industries, you
Yeah.
have to do whatever it is. Like, this is what's going to happen, and that way, at least you have something to anchor in. I just pulled up mine,
Okay.
that I wrote. Right, so I did first is the sentence, and then we do a headline. So the sentence is: Josh Levine spent his career helping business leaders and their teams solve the inability to see past what is by showing what's possible and how to get there together.
So,
And so no matter whether I'm helping, startups kind of create a positioning statement, a global manufacturing company develop an employer brand value proposition, or an organization reimagine, how they should be working together because AI is changing everything.
Right.
It's
The same.
it is about moving beyond that. And
Yeah.
so the final statement here is I changed the way business leaders think about how to help their teams change. So I see myself as someone who can empower and educate and teach
Right. A
those
true change
people.
agent
A
without just giving people direction,
agent.
And I think it's
Yeah.
like, right, it's like bringing them, teaching them to fish or giving them a
Yeah.
fish,
Exactly.
which is
Exactly.
such an incredible skill. It's comes clearly from all of you've built in over time, all the layers we discussed from where you started, graphic, voice, culture,
Yeah.
those all things, so it's so fascinating. It was such an incredible experience because um, it just takes a minute to get there, And it's funny
Yeah.
because I did an obituary in second grade where we had to do
Wow.
Here Lies April. And we literally made tombstones and it was like RIP, and it says you
Whoa.
filled in the blank and it was like Here Lies April, she was, and I wrote nice, and that has like literally been my driving like North Star forever on everything I do and how I want to
Oh
be
my
thought of and
God.
remembered. But isn't that so crazy? And I meant to tell you that when at the end of it, but it was such an interesting exercise to like do that now. That wasn't it was that was how I wanted people to think of me, right? And now it's like, how do I want to be remembered? So it's just it was a wild exercise, but so, so good. Um,
That's amazing.
yeah, it was,
Second grade.
can you
That's
imagine?
amazing. Like you,
But I literally could close my eyes and see the big paper tombstone we all
yeah,
had to
that's
draw on.
great. And I love it. She was nice. It's almost, I mean, full circle, right? Like
Yeah.
that's like not like
Colorado
firefighter.
golden rule, girl. That's what ingrained
Yeah.
there.
Okay.
Um, well, so talk about kind of the work landscape now and what you're doing. So obviously, what I love, your Substack, your podcast. I want to make sure people are catching it because
Yeah.
it's just so brilliant, and you kind of say the things everyone's thinking. But how did that part start, and what do you kind of hope to do with it?
Yeah, so so the theme that I've been reflecting on, pulling from this, this conversation is regardless of what I'm working on, it's all about helping people change. And
Mm,
that to me is what is happening right now. And I've been interviewing culture leaders for 2 or 3 years now, and I have a podcast called Great Mondays Radio. And that's been great. And then at the end of last year, I had the opportunity to work on something that just I wanted to. I was in a class and it was like, what's the problem that you want to work on? And I realized that the job market is just so fucked. And it's sort of like the epitome of what's happening. There's so much change
yeah.
and we're operating in very old ways. And so I started a Substack originally called the Job Market Shit Show. I'm actually evolving it to the Job Shit Show because it's a much larger lens,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
which
Yeah.
is there's so much change. And all I want to do is ask questions and sort of just identify and help people understand that you're not crazy
Yeah.
alone. Like, whoa, this shit just like what? It's happening so fast. And it's
Yeah.
like,
So fast.
it's so insane. And it's like nobody knows what's going on. It's all broken. It's hard to like, is this job listing for real?
Yeah. Yeah.
Is this applicant real? How
Yeah.
do I, as a hiring manager, how do I sort through 1,000 applications, 800 of which are either not fits or bots or
Right.
both?
Right. Right. Written
And
by
it's just
AI.
all those old systems are just we're
Okay.
watching them like fail right away,
Yeah.
almost immediately
Well,
now
and then
with
you just add the
AI.
economic climate and, inflation,
Economics, and
downsizing all
the
day
other
long.
major piece of this that I'm weaving through or identifying is this uncertainty. And that is, I think, ultimately the state, even when we get past, let's say, this administration.
Yeah,
It is it's a fool's errand to think, okay, everything will go back to normal. It
for
will
sure.
not. We are
Mm-mm.
going to continue to live in an incredibly uncertain experience.
Yeah.
How do we survive and how do we do that? And so, your question, what am I doing now? Well, I'm taking my experience having worked with high functioning teams, hyper growth technology companies through previous change and saying, okay, you are using AI and you want to use AI to help you. It's not. You're using it in a very basic way.
Mhm.
Eventually, you're going to find that people will use it in new ways to create new value. But we know throughout history that the value of a new innovation doesn't arise for at least a decade.
Wow. Okay.
And so there's this economic concept called the J curve. And so anytime we have a new technology, everybody adopts it, but you're going to see it either goes flat or drops the economic value until we actually learn how to use it, rearrange how we work around
Right.
the tech, as opposed to rearrange the tech into how we work.
Right. Oh, that's
So I'm going to
makes so much
use
sense.
right? I'm going to use my skill. And what I want to do is help teams accelerate how they operate
Hmm.
to rethink how to use AI together because all we've been doing is focused on how to get better at using AI individually.
Right. It's so true. I mean, we do, we kind of share our hacks and whatnot and how quickly it's changing. And I talk to so many people that say the minute you kind of adapt a solution, it's obsolete because something else has taken that plus, and how fast. And so
Yep.
there
Yep.
is maybe this moment of like slow it down a little bit, right? Because I think we're racing so hard. And I was speaking to some members in Europe, and they were saying like they feel the US feels so far ahead, but because we're
Mhm.
just like throwing anything at the wall to see what sticks and moving through it and busting through it and not planning as we know, like we're not prepared for everything that's coming, where Europe is much more regulated and so they're moving slower. And the thought is that we could get to the same place at the same time, but we're gonna just be like,
Yeah.
along the way, and
Yes.
they're just gonna be like,
That
"Urgh."
that's
And
right.
I just
I
that
love
visual now
that's
is stuck in my
it's
head of
so
like,
true. I
right?
love that's so funny. You're like, we're gonna all get there together, and
Yeah.
it's just
And
like we're
somehow
gonna
we're just
break
gonna
so many fucking things along the way.
totally
Grr.
and on our hearts and souls, and I think that's the part too, where just the overwhelm,
Yeah.
the fear, the feeling of being, made obsolete, the fear of not being left behind, the fear of, just humanity. Hallie did a chat that I think set us up in New York that was very much like, oh crap, the dark side.
Yep.
And so we're all watching it from all sides. And I think ethical AI is just so important, where we can get with regulations sooner than later. Have a whole other long talk about that. But I love that that's where this has taken you, in terms of
Hmm.
the culture aspect. Because I mean, there's nothing more important to culture right now than what's happening and where it can take us or leave us. So I love that that's where you're putting your energy and it's so needed.
Here's I'll give you. I'm writing a piece right now that kind of articulates my like the paradigm or the way that I see it, and it's in three phases. It's sort of three stages of how AI works or how we
Okay.
work with AI. Uh, Stage one is where we are going faster on the same thing that we've been doing, right? So everybody's using it just to do the same. You're using Whisperflow, not that it's necessarily AI, but it's got some AI, right?
Yeah.
Like to enable you to write emails more efficiently.
Right.
And everybody should be doing that. But that's not like you can only go so fast.
Right.
And it's like if you try to go faster down that one track, you're not going to make the kind of the quantum leap that you want.
Okay.
Stage two is the ability to do have skills that only other people used to have, only other experts. So the most immediate example is this idea of Claude Code.
Okay.
So Claude Code is giving people the ability to what you're calling vibe code. I have an idea. It's like if you are someone who is like really, you've studied it and you've seen it, you don't need to learn the code. You can just vibe code it and you get pretty far. And you're seeing that with Claude Design or GPT Images 2.0. You give it a prompt, it does a good job,
Yeah.
right? Not great, but I think you're going to get to 80%.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. We're still in the world of things that already were done, right? So we're still working with what
Right. We're
existed.
more
It's
on
just that
efficiency and acceleration.
efficiency, acceleration, and now I can do other things.
Yeah.
Stage three is when we start working together. And this is what I'm advocating for.
Okay.
Stage three is when we can learn to take a breath, to step back and say, okay, what are the things that we want to achieve? What are we trying to do? And how might we do this in a new way? And it's a lot harder to think about how do we as a team work in new ways to solve these problems.
Mhm.
And you got to start with the strategy, you got to start with your business goals. What is possible? And we're going to go right back to helping people see past what exists.
Yeah.
I don't have an answer,
Yeah.
but I can ask the right questions and say, here, let's understand what you're trying to do as a team. How might we work differently? Don't try to do the same thing again and again and again.
Yeah. True.
We can do a new way of working. We can work in new ways.
Yeah, no, so interesting. And I think it's taking the fear out, right, for all of us because that's what's driving so many people maybe too hard in certain directions. I'm on 181 people on this like WhatsApp
Oh,
chat about
a
AI and
hundred
another, just
percent,
like a
a
million
hundred
things
percent.
and, digesting it all and then trying to think about the application piece for your own world and then how we can help companies and then those companies are thinking and, we get pitched a million AI platforms a day. So do majority of our members. And then we're sharing things across the community as well, which is a big part of our why because it is changing so quickly. And if someone's done the A/B testing and figured it out and says, hey, this is actually really interesting and great,
Yeah,
that's what we bring to each other. And
yeah.
it's just the speed at which, you can spin up a company now. The barrier to entry is so low. The amount of, new businesses that were launched in this last, I mean, the numbers are crazy. And so you do feel this like frenetic speed. And I remember when NFTs first came out and I'm like, I have to figure it out, and look at that now. It's a whole other world. But I ran hard at that. Then I was just exhausted and I'm just have PTSD from that,
Yeah.
Web3 wave of just kind of panic and let's all jump in. And so trying to find the right balance and
We cannot operate like we just can't to live in a state like to make choices based on fear and anxiety is no way to live.
no.
And it turns out it's not very effective, right? Like you need to and it's like there's only so many things, right? You are like, are you using this app? Are you using Whisperflow? Right? Like I'm like, well, not yet, but I'm almost, and it's like you gotta do it. And then like I've got like, and the other Slack channel, I was like, oh, you gotta use these things and do this thing. And I'm like, oof,
I mean,
I'm
it's a
getting
full-time job just to keep up. And
I'm getting left behind. But
yeah.
it's like uh to like anchor in your own strategy. You've got to
Mhm.
direct your own self. Otherwise, you're going to get pulled in all these different directions.
Yeah.
What's your keel? How do you how do you continue to identify that like the point on the horizon that you're going, and if you can learn about a new tool that's going to help you go in this direction, but if not, then then
It's not
don't
for
do it.
you.
It doesn't
Yeah.
matter, right?
Yeah.
Like what is your way of working? How are you going to do it? And that is really that's a mantra, right? Like that's what I'm trying to do because
Well,
I'm
and it
seeing
goes back to the being human part, right? In this world of machine learning and everything driving and efficiencies, at the end of the day, it's the obituary, it's the what drives
Mhm.
you, it's what's unique to you, that you bring. And I think, kind of ending on that note, it's just a beautiful way to think about how to navigate right now, and to continue to kind of tap in as opposed to try to, evolve and twist yourself into, situations that aren't innate,
Mhm.
and definitely we're all pushing ourselves and evolving,
Yeah.
but how to do it where you don't lose yourself along the way.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's right. Going right back into take a breath.
Hmm.
What is true for me? What do I want to do? What are my experiences? What is my unique value? And have a little more maybe confidence in self
Hmm.
that'll allow you to step forward into whatever tomorrow is going to bring
Right.
because who the fuck knows?
Totally. And bring the tools that feel like they can support you in that process, right?
Yeah, exactly.
No, this is amazing, amazing. I adore you. Thank you so much for
Thank you.
this
Thanks for
chat.
having some time. Yeah, thanks for asking all these questions and
It's
being
perfect.
interested.
I'm thrilled to be in community with you.